Jamie had been driving for hours, far off the beaten path, with their GPS signal lost in the middle of nowhere. A detour had taken them down a winding road deep into the countryside, and now they were completely turned around. The dense forest on either side felt endless, the trees looming like silent sentinels as the sun began to dip below the horizon. Just as Jamie considered turning back, the trees thinned out, revealing a valley below. There, nestled like a forgotten relic, was a small town. It looked like something from another time, its cobblestone streets and quaint old-fashioned buildings glowing softly in the fading light. Yarrow Creek, a weathered wooden sign, read as Jamie drove in. Strangely, this town had never appeared on any map. Curiosity got the better of them. Jamie decided to stretch their legs and explore the town before continuing the drive. After all, they had been driving for hours and needed a break. But as soon as they stepped out of the car, an odd chill swept over them, despite the warmth of the evening. The streets were eerily quiet, the stillness only broken by the occasional creak of a weather vane or the rustle of leaves on the wind. The buildings were beautifully preserved, but something about them felt off. They looked too perfect, as though the town had been frozen in time, untouched by the passing years. As Jamie walked down the empty streets, they noticed the few townspeople they passed, elderly men and women, watching from their porches or peering from behind lace-curtained windows. Their faces were expressionless, their eyes cold, tracking Jamie's every move like they were waiting for something. Feeling the weight of their gazes, Jamie quickened their pace and headed toward the town square. It was there that they saw the diner, one of the only places that seemed to have any sign of life. The bell above the door chimed as Jamie stepped inside, and the smell of old coffee and frying food filled the air. A few patrons sat in silence at the counter, their heads bowed, not touching their food. Behind the counter, an older woman smiled at Jamie, but it wasn't a welcoming smile. It was thin, strained, and did nothing to ease the growing knot of anxiety in Jamie's chest. "Can I help you, dear?" the woman asked, her voice soft but tinged with something unsettling. Jamie hesitated. "Yeah, I think I got lost. This town wasn't on my map." The woman's eyes flickered briefly, a shadow crossing her face before she forced another smile. "That's because we don't get many visitors around here." Before Jamie could ask more, the door to the diner swung open and the sheriff walked in. He was a tall man with graying hair and a heavy coat, his face hardened by years of authority. He glanced at Jamie, then at the woman behind the counter, as if they were sharing an unspoken conversation. The silence stretched thin until he finally spoke. "You'll want to be on your way soon," the sheriff said, his voice deep and rough, like gravel shifting underfoot. "This isn't a place to linger." A strange dread crept over Jamie. "I was just about to leave," they said quickly, rising from the stool. The sheriff's eyes locked onto Jamie, and his expression turned grim. "You won't find the road out. Once you're here, well, you're here." Jamie's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" The woman behind the counter exchanged another look with the sheriff, her face pale now, the forced smile gone. "This town," she whispered. "We've been here for a very long time. Too long. Stuck." Jamie's mind raced, trying to make sense of her words. "Stuck? What are you talking about?" The sheriff stepped closer, his voice lowering as if he didn't want the others to hear. "Yarrow Creek isn't on any map because it doesn't exist like other towns. It's trapped in a loop, a curse. We've been reliving the same day for decades, maybe longer. No one ages, no one leaves, and every night the clock resets. The only way out," his voice faltered, his eyes dark with regret. "The only way to break the curse is a sacrifice." Jamie took a step back, heart pounding. "A sacrifice?" The sheriff nodded slowly, and the room seemed to grow colder. "One soul, a life for the town's freedom. It's the only way." Panic surged through Jamie, their breath coming fast and shallow. "No, there has to be another way. I can't stay here." The sheriff shook his head. "You weren't supposed to come here, but now that you have, you can't leave. It's been decided." The townspeople, who had been sitting motionless, began to rise from their seats. Their eyes were blank, their faces void of emotion as they moved toward Jamie in eerie unison. The older woman behind the counter joined them, her kind expression replaced by a blank, hollow look. They closed in slowly, their footsteps unnervingly quiet. Jamie bolted for the door, heart pounding in their ears. But outside, the scene was even more horrifying. The town had changed. The streets, once deserted, were now filled with the same silent, expressionless people, all of them staring directly at Jamie. They began to advance, their movements slow but deliberate, blocking every path of escape. Jamie sprinted toward the car, but it was no longer there. The spot where it had been parked was empty, as if it had never existed. Terror gripped Jamie's chest. They ran to the edge of town, but no matter which street they took, it always led back to the same town square, the same diner, the same blank faces. The sheriff was waiting for them when they returned, standing at the monument in the center of the square. "I'm sorry," he said, and for the first time his voice held real sorrow. "But this is how it's always been." The townspeople encircled Jamie, their faces now illuminated by the eerie glow of the streetlights. There was no way out. The town had claimed its sacrifice. Jamie's screams echoed into the night, swallowed by the thick, oppressive silence that hung over Yarrow Creek. The next morning, the sun rose over Yarrow Creek, casting a soft, golden light on the quiet town. The people resumed their places, as if nothing had happened, their expressions peaceful once more. The town square was empty, the streets calm, and in the diner, the bell above the door chimed as a new traveler stepped in, looking confused and lost, asking about a town that wasn't on any map. The cycle had begun again. It began as an ordinary day in Harrow's Edge, a small town nestled between rolling hills and dense forests. The residents went about their routines, unaware that something strange was about to change their lives forever. The sky was clear, the sun high and bright, but as noon approached, the first unsettling sign appeared. No one in the town cast a shadow. At first, it was barely noticed. A few puzzled glances at the ground, a fleeting comment about how strange the light seemed. But soon enough, the eerie truth settled in. Everywhere, from the bustling market square to the quiet, shaded corners of the park, not a single shadow was visible. The initial confusion quickly spiraled into unease. The human brain, so accustomed to shadows and light, struggled to make sense of the unnatural world they now inhabited. People walked down the streets, their steps quickening as they glanced at their feet, expecting the familiar dark outlines that mirrored their every movement. But the ground beneath them remained empty, flat, and devoid of the shadows that should have been there. It wasn't just the people either. Trees, buildings, cars, all things that should have cast long, familiar shapes on the pavement, now stood as if illuminated by an impossible directionless light. Within hours, Harrow's Edge was buzzing with tension. Neighbors gathered on porches, whispering theories about the strange phenomenon. Some thought it was a scientific anomaly, a trick of the light, while others turned to more superstitious explanations. The local priest, Father Bernard, spoke of omens and divine intervention, his sermons growing more intense as the sun continued its journey across the sky, yet still casting no shadows. By sunset, fear had settled over the town like a thick fog. People locked their doors early, pulling their curtains tight against the unnatural day. That night, the real terror began. As the town's residents slept uneasily, strange occurrences began to plague Harrow's Edge. Windows rattled in the dead of night, though no wind blew. Unseen footsteps echoed down empty hallways, and objects moved of their own accord. In the morning, some residents reported waking up to find that their furniture had shifted, or worse, that they were no longer alone in their homes. Dark smudges appeared on walls where there had been nothing the day before, and whispers seemed to follow people wherever they went, though no one was ever there to speak them. Among those affected was Lydia Harper, a teacher at the local school. She had been one of the first to notice the missing shadows and had dismissed it as an odd atmospheric condition. But now, sitting in her living room in the dead of night, she couldn't deny the creeping horror. Her house had always been a sanctuary, a place of warmth and comfort, but now it felt foreign, as if something unseen lurked just beyond the edges of her vision. That night, as she lay in bed, she felt the distinct sensation of being watched, though every time she flicked on the light, her room was empty. The next morning she found the word "return" scratched into her wooden floorboards. As the days passed, the phenomenon persisted, and so did the horrors. People began to vanish. At first, it was subtle, Mr. Jensen from the hardware store didn't open his shop one morning, though no one could recall seeing him leave town. Then Mary Simmons, the town's librarian, failed to return home after work. One by one, the disappearances added up, until it became impossible to ignore. The townspeople searched frantically, but there was no sign of the missing, not even footprints or any indication they had left. It was as if they had simply vanished into thin air. Fear gripped Harrow's Edge in a way that no one had experienced before. The missing shadows felt like the least of their concerns now, as the town itself seemed to be unraveling. Desperate for answers, a group of townspeople, led by Lydia and Father Bernard, began to investigate the town's history. Old records revealed something chilling. Harrow's Edge had been built on ancient land, once home to a forgotten civilization. Legend spoke of a powerful curse placed upon those who disturbed the sacred grounds of the Shadowless Ones, a group of ancient people who had worshipped the darkness itself, believing shadows were vessels for souls. Long ago, the settlers of Harrow's Edge had unknowingly violated the boundaries of this ancient site, building their town atop it. The curse, it seemed, had lain dormant for centuries, waiting for the right moment to strike. Father Bernard found an ancient journal, buried deep within the church's archives, written by one of the town's original settlers. The cryptic entries spoke of a ritual, one that had been interrupted long ago, condemning the town to an eternal imbalance between light and shadow. The final entry read, "When shadows are lost, souls will be claimed." Armed with this knowledge, Lydia and the others knew they had to act quickly. The disappearances were escalating, and the strange occurrences were growing more violent. The town was unraveling, and they had to stop it before everything was lost. Father Bernard suggested that the curse could only be lifted by completing the interrupted ritual, but the specifics were unclear. Desperate, the group turned to the journal again, hoping to find any clue that would help them break the curse. The entries hinted at a sacrificial rite, one involving blood and fire, to appease the spirits of the Shadowless Ones. But there was a warning. The sacrifice had to be voluntary, an offering made in the light of a moonless night. That night was fast approaching, and the group knew they had no other choice. They gathered in the town square, surrounded by the eerily empty streets, the air thick with dread. A bonfire was lit, its flames casting no shadows, and the group stood in its light, hoping that their actions would be enough to break the curse. As the ritual began, strange things started happening. The wind picked up, though the air had been still all evening. The ground beneath their feet trembled, and from the shadows that should have been there, figures began to emerge. Silent, dark silhouettes, their faces obscured, their movements fluid and unnatural. They were the souls of the Shadowless Ones, returning to claim what had been stolen from them. Lydia, standing at the center of the group, realized what had to be done. With a heavy heart, she knew the sacrifice wasn't something symbolic or abstract. It had to be real. One life for many. Without hesitation, she stepped forward, offering herself to the ancient spirits. The others gasped in horror, but before anyone could stop her, the dark figures enveloped her, their shadowy forms merging with hers until she disappeared into the darkness. For a moment, the world was silent. The flames of the bonfire flickered, casting shadows for the first time in days. The curse had been broken. The next morning, the people of Harrow's Edge awoke to find their shadows restored. The town seemed normal again. No more strange occurrences, no more disappearances. But Lydia was gone. Her name now whispered in reverence, remembered as the one who had saved them all. Harrow's Edge would continue, but it would never be the same. The town had been marked by the ancient curse, and though the shadows had returned, they carried with them the memory of the price that had been paid. In the quiet town of Elmsbrook, tucked away in a remote valley surrounded by thick woods, there was a tradition unlike any other. Every year, on the last Saturday of October, the town held its annual silent festival. The streets would fill with colorful lanterns, food stalls lined the cobblestone roads, and people in masks danced through the square. Yet, amid the lively decorations and joyous atmosphere, one rule was strictly followed. No one, under any circumstances, was allowed to speak. Anna, a newcomer to Elmsbrook, found the tradition strange, unsettling even. She had moved to the town only a few months ago, seeking peace and quiet after the fast-paced life of the city had worn her down. The townspeople were kind enough, though distant. They smiled politely, but there was always something cautious about the way they interacted with her, as if they were guarding a secret. As the festival approached, Anna's curiosity grew. Why would an entire town participate in a festival where no one spoke? She asked her neighbors, but they only shrugged and smiled before quickly changing the subject. No one ever gave her a straight answer. Finally, the day arrived. The streets were decorated with bright autumn colors. The scent of freshly baked pies filled the air, and people donned intricate masks, some painted with animal faces, others with designs of suns and moons. Music played softly from hidden speakers, but there was not a single sound of laughter, conversation, or even the clinking of glasses. Anna walked through the town square, observing the festivities. Children ran in circles, playing silently, while adults waved to each other in greeting. The only noise came from the rustling of leaves in the wind and the soft shuffle of footsteps. It felt eerie, unnatural. Her footsteps echoed loudly in her own ears, a reminder that she was a stranger in this peculiar town. Determined to learn more, Anna wandered to the edge of the square, where an elderly man sat alone, his mask resting on his lap. His eyes, pale and sharp, watched the crowd with a grim expression. Unlike the others, he didn't seem content with the silence. Something in his gaze suggested a deep weariness, a burden he'd carried for far too long. Anna took a seat beside him and leaned in, speaking in a hushed voice. "Why don't they speak? What's the real reason for the silent festival?" The man's face darkened, his eyes narrowing with warning. He looked around cautiously before giving her a nod. Then, with slow and deliberate movements, he reached into his coat and pulled out a small notepad. His hands trembled as he scribbled a few words and handed it to her. "Not here. Meet me after midnight by the old church." Anna felt a chill crawl up her spine as she read the message. She nodded in understanding, slipping the note into her pocket as the man rose from the bench and quietly disappeared into the crowd. That night, the festival carried on as it always did, but for Anna, every moment felt weighted with anticipation. The air seemed heavier, as if the silence itself held something sinister beneath its surface. When the final lantern was extinguished and the masked figures began to drift away, she waited until the streets were completely empty before making her way to the old church at the edge of town. The church was ancient, its stone walls covered in moss and ivy. It had long been abandoned, the doors hanging slightly ajar as though it had been left in a hurry. The moon hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the ground. Inside, Anna found the old man waiting in the front pew, his back to her. He didn't turn when she entered, but spoke softly, his voice rough from disuse. "You shouldn't have asked," he began. "There are things in this town, things that should remain buried." Anna stepped closer, her heart pounding in her chest. "But I did ask. I need to know." The man sighed, finally turning to face her, his expression lined with regret. Many years ago, this town was cursed. It started with the woods. Something ancient lived there. A being, neither human nor beast, something older than time. It demanded silence. The first time its voice was heard, it was during a harvest celebration, much like the festival today. A group of men had ventured too deep into the woods. They disturbed something they should never have found. He paused, his gaze distant, as if reliving the memory. The men who returned were different. Hollow, their eyes empty, and their voices gone. They couldn't speak, no matter how hard they tried. The silence was contagious. Those who came in contact with them fell silent too, until half the town was struck mute. Panic spread, and it wasn't long before the creature revealed itself. It was drawn to sound, to voices. Every word, every whisper, brought it closer. When it finally came, it demanded a sacrifice. "A sacrifice?" Anna repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. The old man nodded grimly. In exchange for sparing the town, the creature made a pact with the villagers. Once a year, during the harvest, there would be a festival held in complete silence. For one night, no one would speak, and the creature would be satisfied. Anna felt the weight of his words settle over her like a cold shroud. "And if someone speaks, the curse returns," the man said, "and the creature comes back hungry for more than just silence." Anna's blood ran cold as the full horror of the town's tradition sank in. This wasn't just a quirky festival or an old superstition. It was a ritual, a fragile truce with something dark and terrible that lurked in the woods. The townspeople were prisoners to their own silence, bound to it by an ancient, malevolent force. "Why hasn't anyone tried to break the pact, to escape?" Anna asked, her voice trembling. The old man shook his head. "Some have tried, but the creature always knows. It listens, always. No one can leave. Those who've broken the silence are taken, and once you're taken, you're never seen again." Anna stood there, stunned, as the old man rose to his feet, his gaze heavy with sorrow. "I've lived through too many festivals. I've seen too many disappearances. But I'm old now and the town will continue. So I tell you this as a warning: leave if you can, never return. The silence is safer than the alternative." Without another word, he walked past her, leaving her alone in the ancient church. For days after, Anna considered his warning. She felt trapped, knowing the sinister force that held the town in its grip. She tried to make sense of it, but deep down, she knew the truth. Elmsbrook was cursed, and no one could defy the silence. She packed her bags and left under the cover of darkness, determined to escape before the next festival. As she drove away, she caught a glimpse of the forest in her rearview mirror. The trees stood tall and still, as though watching, waiting. Even with the car windows rolled up, the silence of the town followed her, pressing in, suffocating, as if the creature was always listening, always near. The next year, the silent festival continued, as it always had, with its masked dancers, its voiceless crowds, and its quiet, unspoken terror. And deep in the woods, the creature waited, listening for the one sound that would bring it back to feast. In the quaint town of Eldridge Hollow, time seemed to move slower than in the bustling cities beyond the forested hills that surrounded it. Life revolved around the town square, where an ancient clock tower stood tall, its weathered wooden frame adorned with ivy. The heart of Eldridge Hollow, the clock tower housed an old bell that rang melodically on the hour, announcing the passage of time. But one fateful autumn, the bell began to toll at odd hours, first at midnight, then at 3 in the morning, and eventually at strange intervals throughout the day. Each toll resonated through the streets, echoing like a death knell. The townspeople initially shrugged off the peculiar ringing as a harmless quirk of their old clock tower. But when the first resident vanished, panic swept through the town like wildfire. Eleanor, a beloved librarian known for her kindness and warmth, disappeared one Sunday morning. A group of neighbors had gathered for tea, and when they began recounting stories about her, they found they could remember her face, her laugh, and even the way she poured tea. Yet when they turned to check on Eleanor, she was gone. They searched everywhere, but found no trace of her. As the days passed, the bell tolled again, and this time it was Jacob, the jovial baker, who vanished. He had been preparing pastries for the market when the bell rang at an unusual hour, a mournful chime that sent shivers through the town. The next morning, the townspeople woke to find the bakery closed, and when they asked about Jacob, their memories flickered like candle flames, faint and insubstantial. No one could recall the last time they had seen him. With each subsequent toll of the bell, more residents disappeared, leaving behind only whispers and shadows of their former selves. Clara, the postmistress, Tom, the schoolteacher, and even Mrs. Hargrove, the old woman who had tended the town gardens for decades, all had been erased from existence, their absence felt keenly but inexplicably forgotten by the townsfolk. The clock tower, once a symbol of community, now loomed ominously over the square, its bell becoming a harbinger of despair. As the fear grew, so did the tension in Eldridge Hollow. Conversations turned to murmurs as people exchanged worried glances, their faces drawn tight with concern. Some residents began to avoid the square altogether, while others took to the streets in search of answers. But no one had any explanation for the tolling bell or the mysterious disappearances. Everyone, that is, except for Max. Max Harper, a young man with a penchant for curiosity and a fiercely loyal heart, had witnessed the gradual unraveling of his once thriving town. He had been close friends with Eleanor, Jacob, and Clara. Unlike the others, he could remember every moment leading up to their disappearances, every laugh shared, every secret told. As his friends vanished one by one, a sense of urgency surged within him. He had to uncover the truth behind the bell before Eldridge Hollow became a ghost town, bereft of its essence. Determined, Max took to the library, scouring through old town records, newspapers, and dusty tomes in search of anything that might shed light on the bell's strange behavior. Hours turned into days as he delved deeper into the town's history. He discovered that the clock tower had been erected over a century ago, but its origins were shrouded in mystery. Rumors of the original builders spoke of a pact made with a powerful spirit, one that could control time itself. The more he read, the more he began to piece together the chilling puzzle. There had been tales of a curse, a malevolent entity that could consume memories and souls, leaving only the faintest echoes of existence behind. The townsfolk had unknowingly awoken it by neglecting the clock tower, allowing its once honored purpose of marking time to fade into oblivion. Now, the bell tolling at odd hours signified the spirit's hunger for souls, one toll for each life it claimed. With this newfound knowledge, Max knew he had to confront the entity before it claimed anyone else. He decided to return to the clock tower, armed with the town's history and the memories of his friends, determined to break the curse that had ensnared Eldridge Hollow. As twilight descended, casting long shadows across the town square, Max approached the towering structure. The air felt electric, heavy with anticipation, and the bell loomed overhead, waiting, pulsing like a heartbeat. He climbed the creaking stairs to the belfry, the sound of each footstep echoing like a warning. The closer he got to the bell, the more he felt a chill in the air, as if the atmosphere thickened with the weight of lost memories. When he reached the top, he stood before the bell, its surface glimmering ominously in the fading light. It was larger than he had imagined, engraved with intricate designs that twisted like vines. It pulsed with a life of its own, a dark energy radiating from it that made his skin prickle. "Show yourself!" Max shouted, his voice cracking under the weight of fear and determination. The bell fell silent, its ringing stilled, but the air crackled with an energy that sent chills down his spine. Shadows danced at the edges of his vision, and then, emerging from the darkness, a figure materialized. A specter wreathed in shadows, its face obscured, but its eyes burning with an otherworldly glow. "You seek to understand," the entity spoke, its voice a chilling whisper that echoed through the belfry. "You wish to stop the tolling, to save those who have been taken." Max's heart raced as he nodded, defiance rising within him. "You're the reason my friends are gone. You're erasing them from existence, and I won't let you take anyone else." The spirit's laughter reverberated around the tower, chilling Max to the bone. "They are not lost. They are freed from the burdens of this world. But you cling to memories like a drowning man to a lifeline. What do you offer in exchange for their return?" "I offer you my memories," Max declared, his voice steadying as he realized the weight of what he was saying. "Take my memories of them, but leave them be. Let them return to their lives, their families." The entity paused, the shadows swirling around it like a storm. "A noble sacrifice," it mused. "But memories are not easily given. You will forget them entirely, and when you do, their existence will fade from this world." "I don't care, I can't let this happen," Max shouted, desperation fueling his resolve. He stepped closer to the bell, feeling its pulse resonate within him. "Take what you want, but return them." The spirit regarded him with an intensity that felt like an eternity. "Very well, you are brave, and for that, I shall honor your sacrifice. But remember, boy, the weight of memory is heavy. To forget is to lose a part of yourself." In that moment, the bell chimed once, a deep, resonant toll that echoed through the belfry and beyond, reverberating through the very fabric of Eldridge Hollow. Max felt a surge of energy wash over him, blinding him momentarily. In the depths of that darkness, he saw flashes of laughter, the warmth of friendship, and the joy of shared moments. Eleanor's smile, Jacob's hearty laugh, Clara's gentle spirit, all slipping away like sand through his fingers. As the sound faded, the shadows around the spirit retreated, and in their place, The townspeople began to reappear in the square below, their faces filled with confusion and surprise. Max stumbled back, clutching his head, the pain of forgetting crashing over him like a wave. The memories of his friends, once vivid and bright, dimmed into shadows at the edge of his mind. He watched from the tower as the townsfolk exchanged greetings, their voices rising in joyous celebration. They had returned, whole and unharmed, but Max felt the weight of his sacrifice settle heavily on his heart. The clock tower stood still, the bell silent now, no longer tolling ominously, but instead marking the time in peaceful chimes. As the sun rose over Eldridge Hollow, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, Max understood that he would carry the burden of their absence forever. He had saved the town, but in doing so, he had lost the very people who had made it home. The laughter, the joy, the love, they all remained, but only in the shadows of his heart, forever lost to the darkness of a bell that had once rung only for time. In the years that followed, the town thrived, the silent festival becoming a cherished memory rather than a haunting reminder. Max lived among them, his heart heavy but resolute, and he made new friends, forged new memories. But the faces of Eleanor, Jacob, and Clara lingered like whispers in the back of his mind. They were gone, yet he felt their presence in the laughter of children, in the scent of baked bread, and in the warmth of the community that had once saved him. And though he had forgotten their names, their spirits would forever echo in the depths of Eldridge Hollow, woven into the very fabric of its existence, a reminder of the price paid for silence and the sacrifice made for love. In the vibrant tech hub of Silicon Valley, a group of ambitious blockchain developers was on the brink of launching their latest venture, a revolutionary new token called Revenant. The team, composed of 4 brilliant minds, Elena, Marco, Raj, and Tessa, believed that this token would not only redefine digital transactions, but also elevate them to a new level of security and transparency. They had worked tirelessly for months, coding day and night in a state-of-the-art office overlooking the bay, their excitement palpable as they neared the launch date. However, what started as an exhilarating journey soon spiraled into a nightmare. Just days before the launch, while conducting routine tests, Marco noticed something odd in the code. A hidden sequence that seemed out of place caught his eye. A snippet that appeared to have no function, but was mysteriously present within the codebase. He brought it to the attention of the team, and after a thorough investigation, they concluded that it was merely a coding error, a remnant from a previous iteration of their software. "Let's just wipe it and focus on the launch," Tessa suggested, brushing off their concerns. The excitement of the upcoming launch overshadowed the lingering doubts. After all, they had worked too hard to let minor glitches derail their progress. With that decision, they pressed forward, and the Revenant token went live. In the days that followed, the initial response was overwhelmingly positive. Investors flocked to buy the token, and buzz-filled social media platforms as news of the project spread like wildfire. But as the momentum built, the atmosphere among the team began to shift. Subtle signs of paranoia crept into their daily interactions. Elena, who had always been the most rational, started to obsess over the token's security. "What if someone hacks into the blockchain?" she would ask, her voice laced with anxiety. Raj, the team's back-end engineer, started seeing shadows in the corners of his vision, convinced that they were being watched. Late one night, while working on an update, Marco experienced a severe headache that made it difficult to concentrate. As he stared at his screen, the lines of code began to shift and dance, forming patterns that made no sense. He blinked hard, trying to shake off the visual hallucination. "It's just fatigue," he muttered to himself, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Something very wrong. The following day, Tessa found herself pacing in their meeting room, agitated and restless. "I swear, I saw someone in the hallway last night," she exclaimed, her eyes wide with fear. "They were just standing there, staring at me." The others exchanged glances, their concern growing. "Maybe we need a break," Raj suggested hesitantly. "Get some fresh air, clear our heads." But the virus, unbeknownst to them, had begun to infiltrate their minds along with the blockchain. It was more than just a coding error. It was a malevolent entity that had latched onto their creation, feeding on their fears and insecurities. Each day, the effects intensified. The code twisted in their minds, warping their thoughts and creating an atmosphere of distrust. The camaraderie they once shared began to unravel, replaced by suspicion and accusations. Elena began to receive cryptic messages on her computer, snippets of code that seemed to change every time she looked at them. "Someone's trying to sabotage us," she declared, her eyes darting around the room as if the walls were closing in. The paranoia spread like wildfire, infecting each member of the team. They turned on each other, convinced that one of them was the source of their suffering. It wasn't long before Marco stumbled upon the truth behind the chaos. Late one night, he managed to isolate the suspicious code that had been overlooked during the initial launch. To his horror, he discovered that it wasn't just a fragment of errant code. It was a sophisticated virus designed to manipulate the blockchain. It used the very nature of decentralized transactions to replicate itself, spreading not only through their digital infrastructure, but also into their minds. Panic surged through him as he realized the implications. "Guys, it's the code, it's a virus, it's messing with our heads," he shouted during their next meeting, his voice rising above the tense atmosphere. But as he tried to explain, the others recoiled, their expressions shifting from disbelief to hostility. "You're the one acting strange, Marco," Tessa snapped, her voice edged with fear. "Maybe you're the one who's compromised." In that moment, Marco knew he had to act. He couldn't trust anyone, not even his closest friends. He retreated to his workstation, frantically typing away, trying to extract the malevolent lines of code and contain the virus before it spread further. Hours turned into a blur of anxiety as he isolated himself, working tirelessly in the dim light of his screen. Meanwhile, the remaining team members were spiraling deeper into paranoia. Raj, convinced that Marco was plotting against them, began to dismantle his workstation, believing it was the source of the virus. Tessa found herself locking the doors to their office, fearful of what was lurking outside, convinced that something was watching them. Elena wandered the halls, muttering to herself, caught in a web of delusions spun by the virus's influence. Finally, Marco managed to compile a patch that would quarantine the virus and prevent it from spreading further. He rushed to present it to the team, determined to convince them to take action. But when he entered the meeting room, he was met with an unsettling sight. Tessa and Raj were in the corner, their expressions wild, eyes darting about as if they could see the invisible menace surrounding them. "You're too late, Marco," Tessa shouted. "It's already too late. We have to protect ourselves." With a sickening realization, Marco understood that they were beyond reason. The virus had turned them into shadows of their former selves, manipulated by the very creation they had birthed. "You need to listen to me," he pleaded. But they only grew more agitated. He could see the tension building, the fear morphing into aggression. In a desperate attempt to save them, he activated the patch, hoping to isolate the code before it claimed any more lives. The moment he pressed the key, the room filled with a bright light, illuminating their faces. For a brief instant, clarity seemed to return. Marco watched as his friends shook their heads, as if waking from a trance. "What have we done?" Raj whispered, horror dawning in his eyes. But just as quickly, the light dimmed, and the malevolent presence surged once more. The room erupted in chaos as Tessa lunged at Marco, her face twisted with fear and confusion. "You did this! You unleashed it!" she screamed, while Raj backed away, his face pale. In the frenzy, Marco struggled to keep control of the keyboard, fighting against the lines of code that threatened to swallow him whole. Just as the virus seemed to overpower him, he managed to input the final command, sealing the malignant code away in a digital prison. But the cost was steep. As the virus fought back, it siphoned off the remnants of their friendship, erasing the bonds they had forged in the process. Marco looked around at the shattered remains of his team, people he once cherished, now consumed by the darkness that had invaded their minds. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, the weight of loss heavy in his heart. When the dust settled, Marco found himself alone in the office, the sterile silence echoing around him. The Revenant token lay dormant, a shadow of its intended brilliance, now a cautionary tale whispered among developers in hushed tones. He had saved the blockchain, but at a terrible price. The memories of laughter and camaraderie faded into the ether, leaving only the haunting echoes of what could have been. In the weeks that followed, Marco grappled with the aftermath. The project was dismantled, the token buried under a cloud of distrust. The specter of the virus lingered in the corners of his mind, a reminder of the darkness that lurked within the world of technology, a world that could turn friend against friend, innovation into madness. Alone, he vowed to rebuild, to learn from the shadows of his past. But as he walked through the empty office, the silence hung heavy in the air, a reminder of the thin line between brilliance and destruction, a line that, once crossed, could never be undone. In the heart of a forgotten valley lay the small town of Eldridge Hollow, a place seemingly untouched by time. With its weathered buildings, overgrown gardens, and a solitary inn that stood at the town's edge, Eldridge Hollow appeared quaint and serene, yet an air of mystery shrouded it like a heavy fog. The townspeople were friendly but guarded, their conversations often trailing off into whispers when outsiders approached. Among the locals, tales circulated of a peculiar phenomenon. The road leading out of Eldridge Hollow vanished after sundown, leaving anyone who dared to leave in darkness forever lost. One crisp autumn evening, a traveler named Clara, weary from her journey, stumbled upon Eldridge Hollow as twilight descended. Intrigued by its charm, she decided to rest at the inn for the night. As she checked in, the innkeeper, a stout man named Harold, watched her with wary eyes. "You'd best not leave after dark, miss," he warned, his voice low and serious. "The road, it isn't safe." Clara, amused yet slightly unsettled, waved off his concern. After all, she had faced far greater dangers on her travels. As night enveloped the town, Clara settled into her room, her curiosity piqued by the stories whispered among the locals. She decided to venture outside, eager to explore the quaint streets illuminated by flickering lanterns. The moon hung high in the sky, casting an ethereal glow over the town, and Clara couldn't shake the feeling of being watched as she wandered through the empty streets. The townspeople had retreated into their homes, leaving the silence thick and oppressive. Hours slipped by, and as the clock struck midnight, Clara felt a strange urge to find the road that led out of town. Something about the way the town seemed to hold its breath intrigued her. Surely the road was just beyond the trees that bordered Eldridge Hollow. She set off, determined to find her way back to civilization. However, as she stepped outside the last row of houses, an unsettling chill crept into the air, and the warmth of the lanterns faded behind her. After walking for several minutes, Clara came upon a clearing where the road should have been. To her horror, she found nothing but dense fog, swirling and thick, obscuring any hint of a path. Confusion and fear gripped her. She retraced her steps, only to find that the streets of Eldridge Hollow appeared different now, disorienting in the darkness. Each turn felt like a trap, leading her deeper into the unknown. As she wandered, Clara's heart raced with panic. She could hear whispers now, faint yet persistent, drifting through the air like a mournful melody. "Stay with us," they seemed to beckon, luring her further into the shadows. She pressed her hands to her ears, trying to drown out the haunting voices, but they grew louder, more insistent. Clara stumbled upon a dilapidated house, its windows shattered and its doors ajar, a ghostly presence emanating from within. She peered inside, where the moonlight illuminated a dusty, abandoned room filled with relics of the past. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the darkness. It was a woman, ethereal and ghostly, with hollow eyes that seemed to penetrate Clara's very soul. "You must leave," the woman whispered urgently, her voice trembling with fear. "Before it's too late." Clara's breath caught in her throat. "What's happening? Where's the road?" The woman hesitated, glancing around as if afraid of being discovered. "The road vanishes at sundown to trap the souls of those who wish to escape. You must uncover the truth to find a way out." With that, the woman faded into the shadows, leaving Clara alone and bewildered. Desperate for answers, Clara returned to the inn, her mind racing with questions. She needed to speak to someone who could shed light on the mystery. The inn was dark and silent, but she knew Harold would be there, his watchful gaze never far away. She hurried downstairs, finding him seated in a corner, a glass of whiskey cradled in his hands. "Harold," she said breathlessly, "I need to know about the road. What's happening to the people who vanish?" The innkeeper looked up, his expression grave. "It's an ancient curse," he replied, his voice low. "Long ago, the town was founded on a pact with the spirits of the land. In exchange for prosperity, the townspeople agreed to offer a sacrifice to keep the darkness at bay. Those who try to leave after dark are seen as ungrateful, and the spirits take them for their own." Clara's blood ran cold at the revelation. But there must be a way to break the curse. Legend says that one must confront the spirits at the stroke of midnight on the longest night of the year, Harold explained. Only then can the truth be revealed. Clara's heart raced as she realized the significance of the upcoming winter solstice. She had a chance to uncover the truth and break the curse, but time was running out. Determined to save herself and the souls trapped in Eldridge Hollow, Clara spent the next few days gathering information from the townsfolk. They were hesitant to share, their fear of the spirits palpable, but Clara's resolve was unyielding. She learned of a hidden grove on the outskirts of town, a place where the spirits congregated at midnight. With the solstice approaching, she prepared herself for the confrontation, vowing to confront the darkness and bring an end to the cycle of sacrifice. On the night of the winter solstice, Clara stood at the edge of the grove, the moon hanging low in the sky, casting a silvery light over the ancient trees. As midnight approached, the air grew thick with anticipation, and she felt the presence of the spirits gathering around her. The whispers grew louder, filling her mind with echoes of despair and longing. "Leave this place," they urged, but Clara stood firm. At the stroke of midnight, the grove erupted in a blinding light, and the spirits appeared, their forms shifting and swirling in the air. Clara could see the faces of those who had vanished over the years, each one a victim of the curse. "Why have you come, mortal?" one spirit demanded, its voice a chilling echo. "You do not belong here." Clara steeled herself, meeting the spirit's gaze. "I've come to break the curse that binds this town. No more sacrifices." The spirits recoiled, their forms flickering in and out of existence. "The pact was made long ago," another spirit hissed, anger simmering in its voice. "You cannot change what has been established." Clara took a deep breath, drawing upon the strength of her resolve. "But I can reveal the truth. You are bound by your own choices. This cycle of fear and sacrifice must end." As her words resonated through the grove, a tremor rippled through the spirits. Memories of the past flickered in their eyes, lost moments of joy, laughter, and life before the pact had turned dark. Clara continued, her voice steady. "You can choose to let go of your anger and fear. You can free those who have suffered in your name. The road does not have to vanish forever." With each word, the air grew heavy with emotion, and Clara could feel the spirits' resistance faltering. The light around them began to dim, and the shadows that clung to the trees started to recede. "Let us go," the first spirit whispered, its voice now tinged with sorrow. "We have waited for someone to help us see the truth." In that moment, the bond that held Eldridge Hollow captive began to unravel. The darkness lifted, and the road reappeared, shimmering in the moonlight. Clara watched in awe as the spirits faded into the light, their anguished faces transforming into serene expressions of peace. The townspeople emerged from their homes, eyes wide with disbelief as they witnessed the transformation of their town. As dawn broke over Eldridge Hollow, Clara stood at the edge of the road, bathed in the golden light of morning. The townspeople gathered around her, gratitude filling their hearts. The road was open once more, free from the curse that had held them captive for so long. Clara smiled, knowing she had not only saved herself, but had also freed the spirits of Eldridge Hollow. With a final glance at the town, Clara set off down the road, her heart light with the knowledge that the cycle of fear had been broken. Eldridge Hollow would no longer be a place of shadows and sacrifice. It had become a beacon of hope, forever changed by the courage of one traveler who dared to confront the darkness. In the heart of Silicon Valley, where innovation thrived and digital art reigned supreme, lived Anton Mercer, a wealthy and enigmatic NFT collector. With a fortune amassed from his early investments in cryptocurrency, Anton had become a revered figure in the digital art community, known for his eccentric tastes and a vast collection of unique, one-of-a-kind pieces. His opulent mansion was filled with holographic displays showcasing his most prized NFTs, each a portal to a different world, a testament to the limitless creativity of the digital age. One fateful evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and cast a golden glow across the valley, Anton hosted an extravagant gala at his mansion, inviting fellow collectors, artists, and enthusiasts to celebrate his latest acquisition, a stunning digital artwork titled Elysium, rumored to be cursed. As the night unfolded with laughter, clinking glasses, and the pulsating rhythm of electronic music, a sense of unease settled over Anton. He felt a strange pull toward his collection, an urgency he couldn't quite explain. Just before midnight, amidst the revelry, Anton excused himself, claiming he needed to check on his NFTs. As he descended into his private digital vault, an elaborate room filled with screens, holograms, and intricate blockchain security, he felt a chill crawl up his spine. A faint glow emanated from the screens, illuminating the darkness of the vault. As he approached, he saw something alarming. A series of transactions were occurring in real time, and his digital assets were being transferred without his consent. Confused and alarmed, Anton's heart raced. How could this be happening? Who was accessing his assets? As he frantically typed at the keyboard, attempting to regain control, the lights flickered ominously. In that moment, he felt an overwhelming sense of dread, as if he were not alone. Shadows danced around him, whispering secrets he couldn't grasp. Suddenly, the screens went dark, and Anton was plunged into a void of silence. Hours later, guests at the gala began to notice Anton's absence. Concerned, they searched the mansion, calling out his name, but found no sign of him. Panic set in, and the night concluded in confusion, with authorities eventually called to investigate. The next day, news of Anton Mercer's sudden and mysterious death rippled through the digital art world. It was reported that he had been found lifeless in his vault, surrounded by his screens, his face frozen in terror. Investigators ruled it an accident, citing a possible heart attack. But whispers of foul play began to circulate. Days turned into weeks, and Anton's digital assets remained eerily active. Despite his death, transactions on the blockchain continued, as if he were still alive. Fellow collectors noticed strange occurrences, NFTs appearing in Anton's wallet that he had never purchased, valuable pieces being sold at bargain prices, and new transactions being made under his name. It was as if a phantom was operating from beyond the grave, manipulating the digital marketplace with a fervor that sent shockwaves through the community. Mara, a close friend of Anton and an NFT artist herself, couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. She began to receive cryptic messages from an anonymous source, hinting at hidden truths surrounding Anton's death. Intrigued and unnerved, she delved into Anton's digital history, tracing the blockchain transactions back to the night of the gala. What she uncovered sent chills down her spine. There were transactions made to obscure wallets, and the NFTs Anton had acquired were moving in and out of circulation with alarming frequency. Determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, Mara contacted a blockchain analyst, Oliver, known for his expertise in tracking down malicious activity. Together, they pored over the records, connecting dots that pointed to a web of deceit involving several high-profile collectors who had a vested interest in Anton's collection. It soon became clear that these collectors stood to gain significantly from Anton's demise. As they pieced together the puzzle, Mara discovered a strange connection between the cursed artwork, Elysium, and the events leading to Anton's death. The NFT was rumored to possess an ancient curse tied to its digital creation, said to bind the soul of its owner to the blockchain. Legends spoke of creators who had mysteriously vanished after their works became too powerful, trapped in the digital realm they had helped to forge. The more Mara learned, the more she feared that Anton's death had awakened something dark and malevolent. Fueled by her determination, Mara and Oliver set up a meeting with some of the prominent NFT collectors who had been active during the transactions following Anton's death. They confronted them with their findings, revealing the connections and urging them to come clean about their involvement. The room crackled with tension as accusations flew, But amid the chaos, one collector named Julia spoke up, her voice trembling. Anton was trying to escape the curse. He wanted to sell Elysium before it consumed him. We thought it was just a myth, but we didn't realize. Before she could finish, the lights flickered, and the temperature in the room plummeted. Suddenly, the screens on the walls began to glow, illuminating the faces of the terrified collectors. A chilling voice echoed through the room, reverberating off the walls. "You sought to profit from my demise." It was Anton's voice, distorted and haunting, as if emanating from the very core of the blockchain itself. The screens displayed frantic transactions, and the atmosphere became thick with fear. Mara felt a surge of energy as she stepped forward. "Anton, if you're here, we can help you." The voice paused, and the screens flickered, revealing flashes of Anton's life, his passions, his art, and his entrapment. "The curse, it binds me. I must be free to move on," the voice echoed, pleading, yet filled with wrath. Mara realized that to release Anton's spirit, they needed to break the curse of Elysium. With Oliver's help, they crafted a plan to reintroduce the cursed NFT into the market. But this time, they would infuse it with the truth of Anton's life, his love for art, his friendships, and his desire to be remembered. By doing so, they could counter the darkness that had claimed him, allowing his spirit to escape the blockchain's grip. On the night of the unveiling, they organized a live auction streamed to collectors worldwide. As the bidding commenced, Mara felt the energy in the room shift. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation, and as the bids skyrocketed, she could sense Anton's presence, hovering between realms, waiting for the final moment. Just before the auction closed, Mara took a deep breath and shared Anton's story with the audience, explaining the curse and the truth behind the NFT. As she spoke, the screens around the auction house flickered and glowed brighter, displaying images of Anton's journey through the world of NFTs, the joy, the creativity, the friendships. In that moment, the audience began to connect with Anton's spirit, their bids reflecting their respect for his legacy rather than mere profit. The atmosphere transformed, the darkness slowly lifting. Finally, as the gavel fell and Elysium was sold for a record-breaking amount, Mara felt a rush of energy coursing through the room. The screens erupted in a blinding light, and Anton's voice resonated, filled with gratitude. "Thank you, I am free." In that instant, the digital realm shuddered, and the haunting presence that had lingered faded into nothingness. Mara and Oliver watched as the screens went dark, the tension of the room dissipating into relief and joy. The curse had been lifted, and Anton's spirit could finally rest. The world of NFTs would continue, but now it carried the weight of Anton Mercer's legacy, a reminder that even in the vast digital expanse, human connection and creativity could transcend boundaries, and true art lived on beyond the blockchain. As they exited the auction house, Mara felt a renewed sense of purpose. Anton's story would not end in tragedy. It would inspire future generations of creators, reminding them that their art had the power to connect souls, even across the digital divide. In the heart of the digital art revolution, a new NFT project emerged, captivating collectors and tech enthusiasts alike. Known simply as Soulbound, this groundbreaking initiative promised a unique concept, a token that would bind itself to its owner, making it impossible to transfer or sell. The creators marketed it as a way to foster a deep personal connection between the artist and the collector, elevating the value of ownership beyond mere financial speculation. Eager to be part of this exclusive project, buyers flocked to mint their Soulbound tokens, unaware of the dark fate that awaited them. The launch day was electric. Artists, collectors, and influencers gathered online, exchanging fervent messages in anticipation of minting their very own Soulbound tokens. The project's website glowed with vivid colors and animations, enticing potential buyers with promises of eternal ownership and artistic immortality. As the clock struck midnight, the virtual doors opened and the token minting began. Thousands rushed to claim their place in this innovative project, and within minutes, all available tokens were sold out. Among those captivated by the allure of the Soulbound token was Jenna, a passionate digital artist who had recently gained recognition for her unique and vibrant creations. Eager to connect with her audience on a deeper level, she minted her own soulbound token, thrilled at the prospect of building a lasting bond with her collectors. Little did she know, the token was not just an artistic endeavor, but a sinister trap crafted by its creators, an ancient curse bound to the blockchain. As days turned into weeks, those who had minted soulbound tokens began to experience strange occurrences. At first it was subtle, odd dreams, fleeting shadows at the corner of their vision, and a feeling of being watched. But as time went on, the manifestations grew more intense. Collectors found themselves drawn into the virtual realm, unable to escape the allure of their tokens. Their obsession intensified, leading them to neglect their jobs, relationships, and even their own health. Jenna, too, felt the pull of her soulbound token. She became increasingly isolated, losing touch with her friends and family as she immersed herself in the world of digital art and the community surrounding the project. She noticed that others were behaving similarly, their lives spiraling out of control as they poured all their energy into their tokens. But the real horror lay in the whispers that began circulating within the community, rumors of a darker truth behind the soulbound project. One evening, driven by an overwhelming need to uncover the truth, Jenna delved into the project's origins. She scoured forums, interviewed fellow collectors, and connected with artists who had initially collaborated on the soulbound project. What she discovered sent chills down her spine. The creators had harnessed an ancient curse, channeling it into the blockchain. The soulbound tokens were not merely artistic expressions. They were vessels designed to trap the souls of their owners, binding them to the digital realm for eternity. Determined to break the curse, Jenna reached out to others who had minted the tokens. They formed a support group, sharing their experiences and fears. Together they worked tirelessly to unravel the mystery of the soulbound project, exploring the blockchain's intricacies and seeking out the creators behind the tokens. However, each attempt to confront the creators was met with resistance. The creators had vanished, leaving behind only their digital traces, now intertwined with the tokens themselves. As the group dove deeper into their investigation, they uncovered unsettling evidence that the creators had intentionally ensnared their buyers. The blockchain held records of a ritual, a dark pact made to ensure the creators' immortality through the souls they harvested. The more tokens minted, the stronger the curse became, pulling the owners deeper into the digital abyss. The realization struck Jenna like a lightning bolt. If they didn't act soon, their souls would be lost forever. Frantically, Jenna and her group devised a plan. They would hold an online event, a virtual gathering where they would confront the curse head-on. They invited all soulbound token holders to participate, hoping to break the bond through collective will. The night of the event arrived, and a palpable tension filled the virtual space as hundreds logged in, their faces illuminated by the glow of their screens. As they gathered, Jenna took a deep breath, addressing the crowd. "We've all felt the pull of our tokens, the weight of the curse, but together we can fight back. We must reclaim our souls and break free from this digital prison." The crowd erupted in support, their collective energy sparking hope amidst the fear. Together, they began to chant, a mantra of release and empowerment, channeling their thoughts and emotions into the digital realm. As the energy built, the screens flickered, and a whirlwind of light enveloped them. Jenna felt the surge of power coursing through her, mingling with the energy of the others. They were united in their struggle, their voices rising in unison. But just as victory seemed within reach, the dark presence behind the soulbound project fought back. The screens flashed with images of the creators, their faces twisted with malicious glee. "You think you can escape?" the digital specters taunted. "Your souls belong to us now." The air grew thick with dread, and Jenna felt her strength waning. Summoning every ounce of her resolve, Jenna shouted, "No, we reclaim our lives. We will not be your prisoners." With her words, the crowd surged, their energy coalescing into a blinding light that pushed back against the darkness. The digital realm trembled, the blockchain itself vibrating with their defiance. In that moment, a crack formed in the digital facade, revealing the truth of the creator's intentions. The souls trapped within the tokens cried out for freedom, their voices merging with those of the collective. The screen erupted in chaos, and as Jenna and the group focused their thoughts on liberation, the curse began to unravel. With a final burst of light, the tokens shattered, releasing a wave of energy that swept through the digital realm. The presence of the creators faded, their dark laughter silenced as they were consumed by the very curse they had sought to wield. Jenna and the others felt a rush of warmth envelop them, a sense of liberation washing over their minds and spirits. As the virtual gathering came to a close, Jenna glanced at her screen, her soul-bound token now a mere fragment of code, devoid of its malevolent power. She looked around at her fellow collectors, their faces filled with relief and gratitude. They had faced the darkness together and emerged victorious, their souls freed from the clutches of the blockchain. In the weeks that followed, Jenna and her fellow artists began to rebuild their lives. They shared their stories, raising awareness about the dangers of the soul-bound tokens and the risks of blind obsession in the digital age. The experience had left its mark, but it also ignited a newfound passion within Jenna to create art that connected people without binding them. Jenna launched a new NFT project, focusing on themes of community, connection, and empowerment. Instead of binding souls, her art celebrated the beauty of shared experiences, reminding others of the importance of human connection in an increasingly digital world. The lessons learned from the soul-bound token would serve as a guiding light, steering her away from the shadows and toward a brighter future, a future where art could thrive without the chains of fear and darkness. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.